And now, Faith Increase Television.
Hey, welcome back everybody to Faith Increase Television. This is your host, Pastor Jonathan Anderson, along with my beautiful co-host.
Hi, Kimberly Anderson.
It's good to be back with you this week, and I hope you all have had a great Valentine's Day and Galentine's Day. We learned about that last week, and just hope everybody just enjoying the Lord, enjoying Jesus Christ, enjoying love of family and friends, and most importantly, loving the Lord with all your heart.
That's key.
We had a great broadcast last week, and you expounded on so many things that I thought were a real blessing to everyone. And whether you're married, whether you're single, whether you're comfortably single, there are people who are just happily single, like Paul. Or you want to get married, whatever the case is, we talked about love. And we want to delve back into that, and the rest of this month deal with that love and how important that is, and how to really love from a biblical standpoint.
That's right. That's right.
And I hope you had a good Valentine's Day.
I did. I hope so. At this recording, I've not yet received, nor have you. But I think we've got to understand.
We're giving away our secrets.
I think the same shirts kind of told on us.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think what we were really trying to stress was that a foundation has to be laid.
Right.
And the foundation has to be God and his love for God and his word, Jesus Christ, the cornerstone. It has to be every relationship, marriages, friendships, business partnerships.
Right.
Family. They've got to be built on the true love, not this emotional, lusty, sensual thing. It's got to be built on God. For we learn in 1 John chapter 4 that God is love.
That's right.
And that anything that's going to be birthed in this earth realm that's going to be of any quality and substance, it's got to be birthed out of the spirit realm first.
No matter what relationship we're talking about.
That's right. And never forget, too, that this is all faith. That, my aunties would say stuff like, you don't know a person till you live with them. And that's great, and that's true. But we go in, first of all, with the love for God.
Right.
A love for ourselves.
Right.
And we walk by faith, even in our marriages, even in our friendships, because we don't know what will transpire.
That's right.
But we do know what we've been promised. And if we stand on what we've been promised in the word, man.
Faith works by love, the Bible
says.
Faith
works by love, that's right.
So you have to have love abounding in your heart, knowing how to operate in it, so you can operate
that's right.
in this earth realm. Here's the truth. Unless you're some kind of hermit, some kind of recluse,
that's right.
You're going to have to deal with people.
That's right.
If you're going to work, you got to deal with people. If you're going to go in the grocery store, online shopping has made it easier for people to not have to deal with people so much. But somebody's going to deliver that to your door.
Right.
And we got to learn, how to really love the way we're supposed to love.
Right.
And that's going to come through.
We're called to be relational.
Absolutely.
We're called to take everything that God has and give it out to the world.
Right. We're not meant to be by ourselves.
We're not meant to be by ourselves. I remember when you read it over in Genesis, when God made Adam.
That's right.
He looked at him after giving every other animal companionship. He said, man, it's not good that man be alone. I'll go and I'll make him a helpmeet.
Right.
And so God understands our need for relationship. He understands your desire to be married. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It's just we can't allow the desire for marriage, the desire for relationship to trump our relationship with God.
Right.
Everything has to be done in the boundaries of the word, in the parameters that the Bible sets for us. And I'm telling you, if you do that, man, your marriage will be truly a marriage made in heaven.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So we looked at last week, our foundation was Matthew 22.
Yes.
And I want to read those verses again. Matthew 22, verse 36 through 40. When Jesus was answering this guy, the guy says, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?"
Yeah.
Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
Yeah.
So Jesus, to me, was giving an order of operation, a procedure on how to love effectively. And he said, you have to first love the Lord your God with all your heart,
with everything in you,
all your soul, all your mind, everything in you. This vertical relationship must be right.
It must be right.
And you went heavy on that last week about, we talked about people dating and all these dating websites and all the kind of things people are doing. And they're looking for somebody with good hair and good eyes, so they can make a pretty baby or whatever. And there's no thought about, does this person love the Lord their God with everything?
When you talk about loving the Lord with all of your soul, all of your mind, we've got to understand that means that my soul person, we're a triune being just like God.
Right.
We are spirit, we live in a body, and we have a soul. And we know that our souls have to be possessed by patience. We have to possess our souls.
That's right.
When we find ourselves, and I'm just going to speak to these dating websites.
Right.
Because everybody wants to know where the pastors stand on dating. Here it is. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And to me, it exemplifies a soul that's not patient.
Sure.
Or a soul that does not trust God's process.
Right.
A man will find you. And there is a man that you will find.
Right.
But when we go out onto these websites and you cast your net. Right? You don't go in saying, I'm looking for somebody and I want to assess how they love God.
No.
You don't go in looking to see how faithful they are in their local church. You don't go in seeing, how much they meditate on the word and does the word. No, you throw your net wide based on these parameters that you've set.
Kim, while you're saying that, you know what I'm thinking about?
What are you thinking about?
Right now, we're car shopping.
Oh, Lord.
We want to increase our car inventory. We need to.
Yeah, we need a bigger
And
car.
I'm thinking about, we're shopping online.
Yes, and I'm about to be done.
But I'm thinking with the dating website, isn't it the same thing?
It's the same
you go
thing.
in and you put on, because there's some sites you can put in there, body type. I don't want a hatchback. I don't want a sedan. I want an SUV.
I want an SUV with a third row.
You can do filters about, I want this color.
This many miles.
This many miles. I'm just thinking, wow.
People are dating like that.
That's what people are doing when they're dating.
And the problem is that you never get to know a person's character that way. You never get to know their character.
Because even with the car, remember you and I, we looked at a car, right? We thought this is the car. We drove 4 hours to go see this car.
Don't judge us. We had to pass the test and we did.
We drove 4 hours to see this car.
We weren't hasty.
Because we didn't bring it home.
We didn't bring that home.
4 hours to get this car. Online, the pictures were so wonderful. Wow.
Woo.
Wow, look at those pictures. That is a nice car.
We're going to get that.
We drove 4 hours to go get it.
Yeah.
Get there, and that car has all sorts of defects and dings and conditions and problems, and the people like, well, we'll fix it.
No,
and we'll fix it.
I'm not trading my money for that.
It was nothing like what we saw.
Nothing
online.
like the pictures.
And I'm thinking about these profiles that people put on.
With all that filter on it.
Filters.
No, your skin ain't that smooth. Ain't been that smooth since you were 16 years old.
So people are dating like we're car shopping.
Well, I think the first...
And the people wouldn't even let us test drive the car.
No, they wouldn't let us test drive it because they knew that mess was raggedy.
So people do when they dating, how you gonna test drive?
Oh, God.
And people in sin test drive.
Ooh.
Be careful. But at least look around the car. No, man, people... I'm just kind of... I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead. I'll cut you off. But
that was good. I just really believe, and I just know it's the will of God that we marry friends.
Right.
God and Adam were friends.
That's exactly right.
He would come and talk with Adam. Well, God wanted Adam to have that same companionship that the giraffes had, the hippopotamuses had. You know, those animals do communicate. You do know animals communicate. Well, now here's Eve. Eve was presented to him from God.
That's right.
With everything God knew Adam would like.
That's right.
That's why you got to be careful, wives and husbands too. But a lot of times, because we are so compatible, we can convince them to do things that we know we shouldn't do.
Right.
No, but that's a whole nother message. But when you go on these dating websites, you don't build, number one, you can't ascertain how much they love God.
That's exactly right.
And here's key for me. You can't build a friendship because you go in right off from jump, from start, from the firing of the gun, we're dating.
That's right.
Wait a minute.
Hold
up. I've got some things I'm trying to go through. And it shouldn't be that we find these things out under the guise of some romantic thing.
Right.
You know, I think we ought to just allow our souls to rest itself in God and allow the way God dictates things ought to happen, allow them to happen. Do you know God can get anything to you from anywhere in the world at any time? He can move jobs, have people relocate, settle your soul down, and allow the word of God and your faith to produce everything God's promised you.
That's right.
You know, but you know, those websites, man, at what point, if my soul is out of whack and impatience has driven me to a website and I get 10 hits, what keeps me from entertaining all 10?
Right. You're going, when you're shopping for a car, you're looking at all 10
I'm looking at all 10 cars. I'm making a checklist and a comparison, but I'm not going to let this one off the line.
Right.
Until I'm sure this one is the one.
Put down a little deposit. That's what we did for that vehicle.
Yeah.
We put down a little deposit. Hold that one. Don't let anybody else get it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that little dinner.
Right. That's a deposit.
That's a deposit.
That little purse.
That's a deposit.
The little necklace. That's
Trust God. That's what we're trying to say. Trust God. Trust His system, even when it comes to relationships. You know, don't be unequally yoked.
Right.
Don't get into something that you're going to regret. We learned last time we were together first that they've got to love God with everything in them. Not just love God because you love God. I mean, how many times have we seen that pastoring?
Come to church.
That I'm going to come to church because you go to church, and you've said that one of your prerequisites for me dating you is that you go to church. Well, they come to church to please you.
Right.
And not to please God.
Right.
And so now you have all of these behaviors that you have to deal with because they don't truly love God with all of their soul and all of their mind. They love you.
Right.
Or they lust you.
They lust you, yeah.
They lust you.
Right.
And so now when the pastor really is preaching or the Holy Spirit's moving and things start to make them uncomfortable, do you know what they do? They leave.
Right.
Now, every time we look up, we're praying, Lord, bring her husband in. Lord, bring their wife in. You know, it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
We should both be two people who love the Lord with everything in us. We come together to create a new person.
Yeah. I remember years ago, I heard a bishop say this, and it stuck with me for the rest of my life, and it will. He said, when you're dating, he was telling teenagers this, they were graduating from high school. He said, what you do is you run as fast and as hard as you can after God.
Yes,
you just keep running. Just run hard as you can.
Hallelujah.
Loving Him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Yeah,
just serving God, just hard as you can.
Right.
He said, and if you look to your left and you look to your right, and the person that you like isn't there next beside you, that ain't the one.
That ain't the one.
Because they should be running just as hard and as fast as God is.
That's right.
He said, now if you look to the left and the right and they're right there,
hey,
they're right.
That's the one.
That's the one, baby.
That's the one. But you shouldn't have to keep, slowing down, go back to pull them along. That means that you are unequally yoked.
So what that means is somebody listening to me tonight, to us, and they're single right now.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, easy for you to say because you already have somebody. Okay, well, we didn't always have somebody.
Right, exactly.
And most importantly is, the second thing you just said was you got to love your neighbor as yourself. So beyond loving God, you have to love yourself enough that, okay, if I'm by myself, it's okay.
That's right.
It's okay. I don't I don't have to have this thing the world makes you think you have to have.
Right.
I mean, Apostle Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, was a single man his whole life.
Right.
Now, he wasn't telling people you have to be single, but he was single and happily single. And he's the one that said, we are complete in Jesus.
Oh, that's right.
So when you love yourself and you love God, you are already complete. You said that last week about not two halves coming together to make a whole person. It's two whole persons coming together to make one new man.
One new man.
And so you have to really be patient.
That's right.
Possess your soul. Possess your soul. I'm going to wait on God to show me my queen or my bride. I'm going to wait on God to bring me to my king or to my husband or whatever you want to call it.
That's right.
In the meantime, I'm just going to love God.
And the key is God's in control.
Yeah.
So all of your ideas, all of your plans, all of your checklists, when it comes to another person, you lay that down.
That's right.
I'll just be transparent. I never wanted to marry a pastor.
Oh, that's right. I remember you said
my. Why would
I'm a pastor. I was already a pastor when we started dating.
Why would I subject myself to that?
Right. There's all kind of shenanigans going on.
Not in you,
right.
but just in that what comes with, And I didn't want it. And, I had my checklist. And when the veil was removed and God says, hey, that's the one. Huh? He's a pastor. He's the one. So you trust God and you marry.
Right.
You trust God and understanding that God has wonderful plans for you. That if that's the husband that you're supposed to marry and he's a pastor, that means all of that stuff will work itself out.
There's a grace that's going to come on you.
Right.
To fulfill that. Watch this, assignment. Because we probably won't get into it fully today, but in Ephesians, Paul talks about that in Ephesians 5 about how marriages give a picture to the world about Christ and the church.
That's right.
So marriage is more than just, enjoyable.
We take great vacations that are Instagram worthy.
It's an assignment.
Right.
And there's a grace for that assignment.
Right.
And so if that assignment, should you accept it, God will bless you in it,
right,
and prosper you.
And there are obstacles that will come.
Sure.
There are trials, but you know what? When you're with the right person, you go through them.
That's right.
I don't say you get stuck in them. You go through them with an ease because there is a grace.
That's right.
And we can apply those principles that we learn about our personal lives to our married lives. Weapons may form, but they won't prosper. Mm-hmm. I remember the number of people who just really spoke against us.
Early on,
and they've all been proven a liar. Why?
Right.
Because there was a word from God.
Right.
And both of us, in our own right, were loving God before.
Right, well before.
I didn't come to you looking for you to make me happy.
Right.
Make me happy? No, God should have I should have already been happy in the Lord. No, I came to you not to complete, but to fulfill this calling that was on
you
both
were
of our
already
lives.
operating in your gifts and callings.
Yeah.
In fact, that's sort of how we came together. It's it almost seems accidental, but it wasn't accidental. It was intentional.
Needed a Sunday school teacher,
right? And didn't know I was pastor, and you're like, what? Yeah. But that kind of patience, because you could have been married to people, all kind of people.
Oh,
before.
yeah.
You're a pretty lady. I mean, you're, got it going on. And
boy, I would have been miserable.
Right.
You know why? Because they didn't love God the way I loved God. Right. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Right.
I was running hard for God, and you hit this.
To the left.
Yeah, you hit this place. I mean, that number is real. I don't knock any young lady who says, "Oh man, I feel like I understand." Right around 25, 26, 28, you start to, and so you start to manufacture something, and you start to try to make something work. Yeah, something work. I bless God that there was no internet. I don't think I'm not that social like that, but I bless God because who knows what you do when you allow your soul to feel desperate.
Yeah. And I'm thinking when you said around that age, 24, 25, 28. And at that time, it was probably because you had, and just like I had at that time,
right.
a mindset, not understanding of longevity in God.
Exactly right.
That, well,
right.
70 years, maybe 80 years, all I have on this planet.
Right.
You know, and so I better hurry up and do this. And that's what happens with everybody.
That's
with many
right.
people that, you know, I got this whole mindset of by the time I'm 21, by the time I'm 30, I got to have so-and-so because, you know, you only have 7. Well, who said that?
That's not true.
We're finding out 120 years is promised. And we want to go after Abraham, our father in the faith. We can go 175 easily. So who says you'll be married by 25?
That's right.
You can be married at 40 or 50 years old or 60 years old.
And it's funny because you're not ready yet.
That's right.
Now there's some people who can marry at 18 because they are matured and at that place, but there's some people very few that, you know, probably not until you're 50 should you even, because there are things that you're still discovering God.
That's right.
You're still discovering yourself.
Right.
No, can it be a short work? It can be, but some people just they're okay. And there is no stigma that should be attached to age and relationships.
Right.
We've got to do everything at its appointed time. You know, the 24-year-old me probably needed too much validation to be a wife. Needed too much, you know, hey, tell me I'm great. Tell me I'm wonderful. Who wants to deal with that every day?
The 24-year-old me was definitely too immature.
So we got to allow God the time to complete in us what needs to be completed before we bring someone else in our chaos.
Into our world.
Oh boy. Of ever-changing hobbies, ever-changing style, I mean, man.
Hair today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah, we got.
How's your hair down to your bottom today?
Because we're still struggling with who we are.
Yeah. An identity crisis.
An identity crisis.
That's why you got to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and your mind.
That's right.
And then love your neighbor as yourself. It's, again, loving yourself.
Yeah, coming into agreement with what God says about you.
You know, there's a scripture that the Bible talks about in Romans 12. I think it's Romans 12, 3. Let me look at that. I don't want to be incorrect on national television.
Amen.
Romans 12, verse 3. For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. Mm-hmm. Or the measure of faith.
The measure of faith, right.
King James. So, but this phrase here in the middle, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. And I remember one day the Lord was really dealing with me about that because we've taught that. Yeah. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought to think.
Right.
And all of a sudden it stood out, don't think more highly.
Right.
It didn't say don't think
highly of yourself. It does not say that.
It just said don't think more highly. In other words, we need to understand and appreciate who we are and who God has made us to be.
We are created.
But understand it's by his grace.
By his grace. We are created in his image and in his likeness.
Oh, wonderfully.
So that makes you extraordinary. That makes you special.
No matter what the tone of your skin is.
Oh, no matter how much weight you have and don't have, how thick your hair is, how thin your hair is, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and your soul needs to know that.
Your soul needs to know it.
Your soul needs to know that. And it needs to know that before you get into relationship with someone else.
Well, I'm thinking that when your soul doesn't know that, there are people who they get into any kind of relationship because, I'm taking what I can get.
That's right. That's right.
Their soul doesn't know who they are.
They don't know who they are. They don't know. And so we spend time in the Word.
Yeah.
And then time coming into agreement with the Word on what it says about us.
Right.
And if I would say, that's the number one problem. I can just speak from a woman's perspective that a lot of young women have, and older women. Mm-hmm. That and I'm going to go way out on the limb and say a lot of African American women.
That's right.
Have a hard time because everything for so long has been survival.
Sure.
Just keep up. Just don't get left behind. This constant fight to come up in a culture where there's been oppression.
Right. You're at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah. And so you don't have that luxury of spending a lot of time finding out who you are and developing that person, developing your callings, because you are in this mode of just make it through another day. Right. And what we're trying to say is stop that.
Right.
Let this word tell you who you are and you walk that out.
Right.
And if you allow that to happen, I'm telling you, you'll look up and Boaz will be standing right there. My goodness.
Book of Ruth, Boaz.
Book of Ruth, Boaz.
Right.
You know, now that was Ruth's husband.
Right.
Whoever your husband
Right.
is, he'll be there.
Right.
When you have gotten to a place where you're now whole and complete in God. So you've got to fix how you see yourself. Lacking nothing.
Yeah.
You've got to spend time focusing on not you. We're not talking about narcissism. We're talking about getting in this word and allowing this word to define you.
Focusing on what God says about you.
That's right.
Focusing on what he has placed within you.
Right.
Focusing on what God is expecting out of you. Because to fulfill your purpose and destiny is all about what God says. Not this creative vision you have for yourself.
My goodness.
It's what God's vision is for your life.
Right.
And when you fulfill that, then he knows how to add the person or people along to help you complete it.
Oh my goodness. And it's not a flesh thing. It's a spiritual thing.
Right.
That then manifests itself in your soul,
Right.
that then works itself out in your flesh. Yeah. The soul is the gate that lets all of this be. Yeah. And so once I get a healthy spiritual person, by the word, by being renewed, by accepting God, for those who aren't saved, that's the only way your spirit will ever get right, is if you come into alignment with God,
right.
and then you allow this word to challenge your soul.
Right.
Once the word challenges your soul, now it works itself out in your day-to-day actions, your day-to-day activities. And then you'll get to a place where you say, you know what? I really like me. And you might find that you'd like a couple more years to enjoy you.
Find out who you are.
Once you find out that you're a creative being like God, or you're an organized being like God, or you're a nurturer, or a person given to hospitality, man, Paul said that. He says, listen, I would wish that you all could stay like me.
Right. Right.
He says, but rather than to burn, better go ahead and marry.
Right.
He says, but because single people can tend to the things of God, and they tend to the things of God based on who and what they are.
Yep, exactly.
And so then you develop that and you find out, man, I enjoy being with Jesus. I enjoy using everything he put into me to advance his kingdom. And marriage might slow that down because now I've got to deal with a spouse.
Well, I enjoy dealing with my wife.
I enjoy dealing with my husband.
She talks so wonderfully, and so I learn a lot from her. And we've been talking a lot. We're out of time, though. So we're going to come back next week and finish this conversation off that we're having here. So you tune in next week.
Yes.
Until next week, this is Jonathan and Kimberly, and it's reminding you that this is the victory that overcomes the world, even our faith. We love you so much.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.